Good evening to you. Happy New Year. And as some of you may know, I am Phynne Belle, your instructor for today's Get Inspired and Speak Up. I am a co-director of the Poetry Global Network, as well as the organizer for the Fincabulary platform, both which bring you literary and poetry programs. In every session, we like to focus our energies on building effective skills. These skills will get us right into the act of writing. What is begun here in this particular session can be the inception point to a fully fleshed story or poem that I do hope you continue to workshop on your own. This is also a space where I want you to develop and strengthen your knack for storytelling, both written and spoken. Usually a session would go like this. First, you will be given the initial spark, and that is 5 prompts in succession. Next, we engage in what I like to call quick writing sprints, where you free write in a comparatively shorter period of time and do not pause at this time in the process to make any edits. No edits whatsoever. And finally, time permitting, we take a moment to read our works out loud to the room. Before we go any further, if you've never been here before, please feel free to ask questions. You'll notice at the right side of your screen, there are icons. Most importantly, there is the chat icon, and you can post any questions, comments, or anything that you've written that you'd like to share in the chat. You'll also probably notice on your side, on your end, that the poll button is lit up. If you wanted to click on that, it's optional. That is a weekly question that I pose to the class. And it's really helpful for me when I make up the syllabus. So at this point in the class, we have been almost going on a year. So I would like for us to expand the writing time just a little bit. We're still going to be doing very short bursts of free writing time, but I also want us to allow time to build a practice of writing continuously, a sustained writing hour, without being tempted to stop and edit. So instead of 5 writing prompts today in succession, we are instead concentrating on perhaps 3 or 4, time permitting, and allowing for a longer period for you to chew on the prompt, to really consider it, and to ask questions of it, to write it, and to explore. So how these sessions normally go, to reiterate, I will present the prompts that will be, they will take a moment to just sit and digest, and then we will eventually write to. Please refrain from doing any active editing at this point. Instead, I'd like you to maintain a flow of writing. Anytime you feel like you want to stop, correct some punctuation, correct some grammar, move yourself back into the space of just free writing. There will be time for you to truly sit down with your piece over the week. That's when I want you to further workshop it. So you can allow it to breathe a bit and return to it to polish it up. When we have completed all the prompts, if time allows, I do invite you to share your piece at the end of this class. However, you could do that at any time. If you finish early, or if you don't want to do a particular prompt, feel free to share a little bit of what you wrote in the chat. I believe that this not only helps you to practice the skill of performing your piece in front of a room of people, but this also helps you when you go back much later to potentially refine the piece, to hear it from the beginning in a way to form its poetic internal rhyme, cadence, and rhythm. This is very helpful. I know it personally is helpful to me. So when we get to that point in the hour, should time permit, if you would like to read a little bit, all you have to do is click on the speak button, which is the hand icon, and then you will come up and join me in the live. So before we begin, please remember to keep your inner critic and judgment of your work shared here whether it be yours or anybody else's, waiting for you outside the session. We have no space for criticism or judgment of the pieces. We are here to uplift ourselves, to uplift our peers, and to feed into our creative writing process. So I'd like you to join me right now to take one very deep and cleansing breath through your nose and out through your mouth slowly. Close your eyes if you need to. Take a deep breath in through your nose. And out. So, our prompts. We are now at the point where we started observing inward in earlier sessions. We want to go from inward to outward. So I want to start the session with a warm-up. So get your pen and pencil ready, your writing app ready. We're going to do a warm-up. This warm-up will be the duration of 3 minutes. I'd like you to create a list poem on things that make you unexpectedly happy. Please create a list poem on something or some things that make you unexpectedly happy. You have 3 minutes to do so. If you've never done a list poem before, basically, it is a poem in the form, it's as simple as that, a poem in the form of a list, whether it is a numbered list or you include the numbering in the poem itself in numeric or word form. And if you are looking for a little bit more of guidance on that, since we don't have more than an hour to really delve into it, I'm going to give you a link so you can read more into it. If you don't know how to do a list poem, just write something, free write to something. And then you can go back and arrange it as a list. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes on the clock. That begins now. 3 minutes for the warm-up are almost up. Okay, take a few moments to gather those thoughts, tie them into a neat bow if needed. If you have some loose ends on any of these exercises, don't worry about them so much. We are here to free write and get the ideas out. So we are going to move into our first official prompt. And so this prompt, what I'd like you to do for it is I'd like you to start the idea of a poem or story that is inspired by one of these quotes. Start an idea of a poem or a story that is inspired by one of these quotes. And these are sort of nonsense quotes, so they can lead you anywhere. Don't think too hard of them. Just kind of allow them to, for you to respond to them very viscerally or just very intuitively. So they don't have to make perfect sense to you. Just pick out things that really speak to you. So the first the first line is, exit pursued by a bear. Exit pursued by a bear. This is from Shakespeare's The Winter Tale. Next is, all forms of madness, bizarre habits, awkwardness in society, general clumsiness are justified in the person who create good art. Roman Paine, Rooftop Soliloquy. And then finally, never was a cornflake girl, though it was a good solution hanging with the raisin girls. This is Under the Pink, Tori Amos. So pick one of those and begin writing. You will have 8 minutes to write to this. So go ahead and start. 3 more minutes left to write. Time is now up on that prompt. We're halfway through our prompts. We have 2 more to go. Let's move on to the third prompt. And that third prompt is, write about a character or main focus of your poem or story who can only express their thoughts in obscure statements. I'd like you to write about a character or the main focus to your poem or story. And this main character can only express their thoughts in obscure statements. Again, you have 8 minutes to write to that. I'll go ahead and post that in the chat. Please begin now. Do remember that as you're going through your writing, to pause and consider what the prompt says. And it is also helpful to, before going to the free writing part of it, if you are kind of hesitant, ask yourself questions. Write down the first question that occurred to you when you were looking at the prompt, when you were considering the prompt, and answer those questions if you can, in the text of what you are creating right now. Now we move on to our final prompt of the evening. What I'd like you to do for this prompt is I'd like you to tell us about a risk that you took that paid off immensely. Tell us about a risk that you took that paid off immensely. You have 8 minutes to write to that. And after the 8 minutes, we will move into talking about the optional homework. So go ahead and begin writing now. The timer starts now. I will put that prompt in the chat. That concludes our prompts for the evening. If you wanted to and you haven't already, please do consider, jotting them down or taking a screenshot of the prompts so that you can continue to work on them and keep them fresh in your mind after the class, in between classes. So we're going to move on to the optional homework. On previous sessions, the assignment that I gave to the class was to go into a more in-depth observation of self. This was followed by a take-home to observe other. So we then connected self and other. This week, I want us to do a little bit more on that. Let us do further exercises on connecting this self and other. If you wanted to, before we go into that, if you wanted to go into the progression of this, how we came to this point of having these kind of prompts, and you want to kind of have a connected story of it, to build maybe one body of work that has that sort of narrative arc, you can definitely email me and I will send you some of those prompts that had to do with self and with other. So for this week's optional take-home homework, should you choose to do it during the week, this is something to fill in your week with a writing project, if you don't already have one that you are working on. So this one is really quite simple in concept, but it's a little bit more complex in the observation and embodying of. Thank you so much. You have a good rest of your day, evening, and have a good weekend. So this one is quite simple in concept, but it's a little bit more complex in the observation and embodying of. I'd like you to think of someone you have known who made a decision that you did not agree with. And I'd like you to place yourself in their shoes. Do consider while you're doing this what you would do differently. And did you gain a better understanding of the situation, their predicament, their decision or response? So go ahead and think about that for a little while. I'm going to post that in the chat right now. And because we don't have a lot of people and only about 15 minutes of time left in the class, so what we're going to do instead is, instead of coming up to the live or sharing your poems, I would rather like you to take this time to either polish up and begin polishing up or begin I'm sorry, apologies, because there's no polishing up happening in this session, but continue writing, free writing to your prompt of choice or your prompts of choice that you'd like, or consider beginning a skeleton of your optional homework. And then your third option is, if you have a writing project that you're currently writing on, please feel free to do that for the next 15 minutes. I do highly encourage you to pick something simple if you're not in the practice of writing, or you're not writing for a specific purpose. Say, for example, submitting to literary journals, writing poetry that you share if you go to live or online venues. Consider a writing project that is highly personal but very satisfying to you. A gratitude journal to begin with, a journal of observations, a journal of color observations. There's a lot of options. If you need any examples or you'd like any guidance, again, you can email me as well. So I'm going to allow you for the next 10-ish minutes to go ahead and keep writing, and then we will conclude the session. So right now is our quiet writing time. So go ahead and continue writing. If you have any questions, please put that in the chat. And anybody who has to leave right now, please have a good weekend. Thank you.